I'm Riley Reese. This is the Sophia Unfiltered podcast, where we bring together thought leaders, wellness entrepreneurs, makers, and emerging health leaders. I'm grateful to talk to these brilliant minds and share their powerful stories with you. And I especially love listening to the conversations that are led by my friend and co-host, Lauren Deitch. Lauren is a health coach, a life coach, and a counseling practitioner. She's been part of the Sophia family since the early days. We're here to have raw, unfiltered conversations because sharing your stories has the power to change lives, help others heal, and transform the way we take care of ourselves. I'll let Lauren fill you in on her guest today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sophia Unfiltered. Today, we have the honor and pleasure to sit down and talk to Deb Erickson. She is a female entrepreneurial powerhouse, and she is also a neuro trainer, a mindset expert, a CEO at the I Can Institute, among many other things. Deb, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor. I just want you to know how much I appreciate this time.
We are so grateful, and I know our listeners are just going to love this episode as much as I selfishly am excited to be chatting with you today about. But for those of our listeners who do not know you and would love to hear a little bit about your personal story and how you got into the health and wellness profession, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. You know, I grew up where women weren't really expected to do a lot with their lives. And on top of that, I was badly dyslexic. But at that point in time, nobody really even knew what that was. And so, I was just called slow or special. And, I really struggled with self-esteem. I was sexually abused as a child. And so I had body issues. And I had a tough time getting through high school. If it hadn't been for high school sports, I don't know, that I would have stayed engaged and graduated. But then I wanted to be, my first role model was this really, really powerful female coach that I had in high school. And it was like, I think that's so important to get a female mentor or to have that role model where you can see the possibility of something. And I thought, okay, that I could do. I could be a coach. I could be a teacher. And so she actually helped me get accepted into Illinois State University. They had a special year where they let special kids come in. And I found my home. I really flourished. I got to play ball. I got to go to school. I got a degree in physical education and health and wellness. And that really began my journey from a place of being so frustrated in my own body and in my own confidence. And I learned during that time with her, I really learned a lot about mindset and mental wellness and the power of our thoughts. And that was the beginning. I got a teaching experience for about 10 years in public schools as a coach and a health teacher and never looked back.
Deb, I love that we have that in common. What my teacher heart just explodes when I hear you say that you had a role model and a mentor that really was such a pivotal influence on helping be a catalyst for your young life. And I feel that so many of our listeners are going to relate to the vulnerability that you shared in your story, where you were facing challenges, not only from a societal perspective, but also from your own internal self at the time. And it's so interesting to think about how you found sports as a way to not only find community, but then it seems like you said, mindset really started to shape during that experience of sport. So I would love if you could give us a little bit more about how you found yourself through teaching and coaching and mentoring while you were in your teaching and coaching career.
Yeah. The really fascinating thing when I was in high school working with this coach, she taught us the power of our mind, the power of our thoughts. We would practice every single day. Every single day we had practice, we would get together and she would say, okay, mindset first, then skill set, then we get on the court. And, there's so many, research projects and so much out there that tells us that when you see clearly in your mind an outcome, it changes everything, right? It puts the brain on a path to achieve it. And so I would practice. I'll give you one of my favorite stories. She always had us practice doing basically a triple play all by yourself. This was softball. You got to execute a perfect triple play by yourself. I was a third baseman, so I'm in the hot box, right? And so my vision was that I would catch a hard line drive out number one. I would tag the runner before they could get back to the base because she was leading off a third base. That would be out two. And then I'd whip the ball over to first base. And I practice it and practice it and practice it for years. This is like 3 years, right? We practiced. My senior year in one of the final championship games, we were ahead, but the tying run for the other team was standing on third base. It started to rain. And it had been raining off and on during the day, and there were puddles around the field. And they didn't want to call it off because the team that was at bat, right, they're behind by 1 run, but they've got the bases loaded. So they were like, we're not calling it off, we're playing. And what was fascinating is my coach kept yelling out, today's the day. I get goosebumps, today's the day. And what she was doing, she was anchoring back in that vision, right? And so the rain is pouring down. My hair is in my face. I can hear, right? I can hear the crack of the bat. I couldn't hardly even see. There was just this flash of the white ball moving off, right? Off to my left. I leap over, catch it, right? So I got out number one, but I'm horizontal. So I go face first into the mud. So when I stand back up, I know I've got out one, right, in my glove. But the thing is that I can't see anything, but it doesn't matter. I've practiced so many times in my mind. I knew that girl was off third. I could feel her off third. I just leap in the other direction, tackle her out number two. And then my first baseman is screaming at me. Can't see her, but I can hear her. Stand up and whip the ball. I can hear that slap, right, that ball in the glove. And in that moment, it was all I could think about was it happened. The thing that I had practiced for 3 years, it happened exactly. I have to tell you that was a watershed moment in my life, right? There was a moment when I said to myself, this stuff works. And in that moment, I have to tell you, I've never been the same, right? Because all of a sudden, all my doubts and all my fears and my insecurities and I'm not enough or I'm too much or I'm whatever, all the stuff we grew up with, all of that, like in that moment disappeared because what I realized was I create my reality and that my thoughts and my pictures and my feelings and my beliefs, it all rests on me, that matters. That matters because I'm creating something. So I used that knowledge through all my teaching career as I taught classes, right? As I coached and I engaged with young people. That was always my biggest message was that the thoughts you're thinking really do matter. And we are going to create your ideal life today with the thoughts we're thinking. And that was really the beginning of my mindset work, my mindset journey.
I literally got like chills because I'm just like, it's just so relatable and just so empowering because I feel like when we really look at what we can control, it is ourself. And the core of ourself is our thoughts, right? And those thoughts can manifest in so many different ways, whether it's physical repetition of a task or a different skill set to having this all-encompassing 3 years of over and over and over again moment, finally having it realized, or that visualization where it's like completely in your mind and you're imagining how you'll feel and what you'll see and all of these different things. And you can put yourself back there even now. I mean, watching you and listening to you explain this, it's like you're reliving the joy. And it's one of those things where the key to your success starts with controlling your thoughts and the power of self-awareness and really looking into where am I responsible and what am I putting into the world? And I just think that that's absolutely incredible that you were able to see not only how big of a gift that was to share with your students, but how much bigger of a calling that was to step into outside of your teaching and coaching career. So feel free to then give us the next chapter. So you leave teaching and coaching and you're feeling called to pursue this bigger heart project with working with mindset. So tell more.
Yeah, well, I started traveling, the country. I was speaking on stages. I had no idea that I could speak. At my school one day, the speaker didn't show up and the little teacher, I was on the committee and everybody was just looking at everybody and they handed me the mic and they're like, you do it. And I had to entertain an hour and a half of my teacher, peers. And you know how tough that is because teachers are sometimes the most critical. And I killed it. And it was like, oh, here's another skill I had no idea that I had. And so I started getting out. I started all kinds of youth organizations and, I did assemblies and you can imagine assemblies. And then that bled over. Parents would come to me and say, would you come and talk to our group? So then I was talking to companies and that bled into bigger companies. And so I was teaching and coaching and training Fortune 500, companies. And mostly they're people who were in sales. And again, it was one of those I kind of stumbled into. It was like, oh, I have a natural talent here, And so started doing that. And then I realized I had this moment. I was speaking to a huge audience. And this woman came up to me and she said, I saw you 2 weeks ago. You were, at my kids' thing. And she said, I'm really disappointed you let me down. And as a teacher, that just like eats your heart out, I know. And so I was like, what happened? And she said, well, I felt so good while I was here in your presence. And then I went home and I couldn't find it again. I couldn't find the mindset of the positivity or none of it. And she's like, I think you lied to me. And I was like, no. You felt it. So it was real. But what I realized was, and the teacher in me just went crazy here, right, is that she needed a guide by her side. It's one thing to be a, sage on the stage, but you got to be a guide by their side. You got to stand next to them every single moment, every single day. I thought, how the heck do I do that? That's when I started building neuro tools for people to have 24/7 so they could just literally open up their phone on an app, access to a tool, a training, an insight. They can jump on a meeting and get connected and get what they need. Because the truth is, our habits are deeply embedded. In fact, your subconscious mind is in charge 95% of the time. That's like 23 plus hours a day. And so if the habitual patterns that you have been running all your life are in charge, how do you ever make a change? Well, that's why this app and these neuro tools are so important, because it can help in the moment, right? Create that new awareness, and it can reprogram that subconscious mind so that tomorrow looks brighter than today, because it is a journey. It takes time.
Absolutely. And I just feel like one of the things that I feel like echoes in so many of the interviews I've had the honor to sit down with, and my own personal journey, and all of these books that share a similar story, is the power of owning your habits. And I think that it goes back to what you were sharing earlier, where it's like, you have to cultivate that self-awareness. We have to create a curiosity around, why am I doing the things that I do? As opposed to just letting the autopilot run whatever habits that we're going about our day with, whether it's coming from past societal expectations, our cultural upbringing, whatever it might be. It starts with a curiosity around self-awareness and just simply reflecting on, why am I doing the things that I do? Or why do I feel the way that I do? And I feel like if we approached it with a curiosity as opposed to a judgment, whoo, magic, right? And I just find it so beautifully said. And as I was listening to you speak about how you had this person approach you, and I immediately was like, oh my God, as a teacher, you're like, I either have to defend or cry. Then it's like, all you want to do is help and be of service, right? That's why most people get into being an educator, is they just want to impart care in whatever way that looks like. And it reminded me of this technique, and for our listeners who don't work in education, it's this technique that educators use called I do, we do, you do. And essentially it's like this technique for teaching a new skill set to your students. So I do, meaning the teacher. So as Deb was speaking, it's like, the sage on the stage is what she called it. And then the we do, while you're there in the conference and you're experiencing and feeling all of the things and everything's awesome. But that you do was the part where there was a breakdown and you felt a call to solve the problem. So I can't wait to get into this. Let's do it. So I know that so much of your work and your passion is around neuro training. So for our listeners, can you define what that is?
Yeah. Here's the thing. I spent about a decade in therapy, trying to work through all my childhood stuff. I had an eating disorder. I would gain and lose 60 pounds in a heartbeat and never keep it off. And, had a lot of safety issues and trust issues. I had my stuff. And I kept thinking, I spent a decade in therapy. And what really happened was I did claim back all my memories. And I did learn how to manage my eating disorder, but it was a struggle every single day. It was like, control, And so, I had no balance. I was like, it was a stranglehold to try to make something better. And I kept thinking, there has got to be a better way, right? There has got to be more ease and more flow. And why does this have to be so hard? And that was about the time that neuroscience was really coming of age. And neuroscience is really the study of the mind, how we are wired, and more specifically, how could we intentionally rewire? Because we used to think that the mind was hardwired. We weren't studying live minds. We were only looking at dead minds. And so it was kind of like, okay, that's what we understood, a dead brain. But once we started being able to use all kinds of electric measurements, that changed everything. And so what we discovered through neuroscience is we discovered how to, number one, really help rewire brains that had been damaged in, a traumatic injury. And then we started looking at, great, how could we rewire mental illness, minds that have been affected by mental illness? And then a small group of scientists started saying, well, if it works for those two communities, could it work for personal development? And that is about the time that I really got introduced. And I got to tell you, it was one of those aha moments where, I had chills for days, like, this is it. You've been asking, this is it. Because what I realized, I started studying with, all the giants, all the public figures, like John Assaraf and Tony Robbins, and, all those guys that were starting to mess with that. Authors of The Secret, is kind of connecting with those kind of people. But then I also followed neuroscience researchers, people who were exploring the research that was really coming out day to day. And as I connected with that community and played with that community, what I realized was, okay, we could take that information and we could apply it. So my first application was to the network marketing community sells like Mary Kay, right? And it's women who originally they were selling a product, but they were stuck and they were frustrated and they were scared and they had all those. And I thought, what if I build a system for them to build their confidence, to change their energy? And so that's where it started, kind of business success. How do you use it in a business arena? And I've been doing that for 25 years. And that's really where my, global reputation came from. But then it was really just a few years back, about 5 years back, that, again, I was speaking at a huge auditorium, had somebody raise their hand, and she said, Deb, would this work for weight loss? Rewire your brain for weight loss to make weight loss easy. I was at my heaviest weight in my entire life. I'm standing on the stage, fully maxed out in my body. I'm only 5'2", right? Over 200 pounds. And I'm standing there, the expert, and I had to go, yeah, it would work for that. It was one of the most humiliating moments of my life, but also one of the most enlightening moments, because I went home committed. I was like, why the heck am I not using this? I use it for all that other stuff, increased sales and, productivity. Why am I not using it here? And I went home and I built an entire platform for me, just for me, because it was like, I need to prove that this stuff worked. And then I spent, a period of year and a half using neuroscience, neurotraining, neuro tools to drop 60 pounds now and never put any of that weight back on. And I will tell you, it's the easiest thing I ever did. This is not about a product. This is not about an eating plan. This was not about a workout regime. I see people all the time on Twitter. They'll show a pre and post picture. Lost 50 pounds, right? Here's before, here's after. And the other day I saw one, and a woman, the caption underneath, the woman said, "It almost killed me, but I did it." And everybody in the feed was like, "Way to go, girl." Our society applauds struggle and overcoming, right? And, that kind of energy of just tough it out, cupcake, make it happen, that kind of stuff. And so everybody was really applauding her discipline and her willpower. And my heart broke because I know she can't keep it off. She'll go right back. Because willpower and discipline and struggle and effort and pushing, right, does not put you into ease and flow. It puts you into force. And I've done that my whole life. I know where force leads you. You get a temporary result because willpower and discipline are aspects of the conscious mind. She will not be able to maintain that. And it breaks my heart because guess what? She just trained her brain on one of the most dangerous statements you'll ever make. When you say, "It almost killed me, but I did it," your brain says, "I will never do that again. I almost died. I almost died." And people have no idea how they are programming their mind with the kinds of things we say without really thinking about it. But that was the beginning of the second program I built, I Can Mind and Body. But that's how it came to be.
It's absolutely incredible to just listen to you share these nuggets of wisdom, because I'm sure for our listeners, if anybody's in like the personal development or the business development side of things, they're like, yeah. Like I've read these things, or this sounds familiar, or yes, like I can get behind it. But there's so much truth behind what you just said. And I'm going to back us up for a second, where it's like, we as a society have a tendency to compartmentalize these aspects of our life. And that question of, well, couldn't this be applied in X way? What a question. And it's just like, again, we come back to this curiosity of like, okay, if I know that something works for me in my professional life, is it then possible that it could also work for me in my health and wellness aspect of my life, or in my parenting aspect of my life, or my relationships, or whatever? And it's like, it's just bewildering to think about how we almost like champion this compartmentalized aspect of like what makes us successful in certain aspects of our life. And it cultivates so many problems, which just again begets what you were saying around, what we say is tremendously important, and our brain is always taking in those lessons and that information. And there's just so much science, and I'm sure we could literally just have like an entire episode around like neuroplasticity and like all of the neuroscience and how to rewire your brain and all of these beautiful things. But I think that where you took the end of that story, where it's like, if we are literally programming and hardwiring our brain to be successful with temporary values or temporary goals or temporary traits, then we are going to see temporary results. And I feel like there is so much that people need to hear in that message from you, because it is so critically important and so true. And it's like, if we're just looking to lose weight, or I just want, it's, diet culture, everything is temporary. If it wasn't, how would they make money, right? So they want to keep you coming back for all of these different things. And it's like, yeah, if you're just telling yourself you want to lose the baby weight, or you're just telling yourself that you want to get to a certain position in your career or whatever it is, well, if it almost killed you to do it, your brain is trained to survive. So it will tell itself to avoid doing that forever. And then it's like, it's so interesting. In my private practice, I typically tend to work with women, and they're like, well, I used to be a marathon runner in my, back in college, or I was a collegiate athlete, or, I was so driven in my 20s, but I just can't find that. And I'm like, oh yeah, you mean you're a different person? Or, like you're saying, you had temporary goals that you were chasing and you were successful at achieving those, but your value system has changed. So I'm sure that cultivated so much of your work behind wellness personalities. Can you speak to what wellness personalities are and kind of how that really catapulted the rest of your work?
Well, so from where we kind of left off in the story, I decided I had to build this platform and this new app. And so we did that. We built it for me first, because I believe that I have to prove it on me. I have to know it works. So I did it. And so people are constantly saying, Deb, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Something's happening. You're doing something. I can see it. What's going on? So finally I felt like, okay, this is developed enough. I'm going to roll this out to the public. So we launched a new app. And so now, hundreds of people coming into the app, showing up every week, asking questions. I'm doing all this coaching, and I keep thinking to myself, you know what? I'm seeing some patterns. I'm seeing that there's certain traits and certain groupings that I'm seeing over and over and over again. So I started taking note. And what I realized was that there are certain personality traits, personality structures that show up in a certain way, and they cause you to try to problem solve in a different way. So one of the personality traits is called the warrior. And the warrior is that individual that says, even if it kills me, I will get it done. Their willpower, their discipline, their force, they will do whatever is required. They are relentless. And the superpowers that they have causes you to look at them and go, wow, look at them. But what you don't know is that individual is paying a horrible price. They are exhausted, right? They're terrified to fail. Every single time they set and don't achieve a goal, they believe in themselves even less and less. They think their value and their worthiness in the world has to do with, the fact that they can achieve something. So when they don't achieve it, it's very destructive. And so what we know with these personality traits is that people solve problems differently based on what you've learned in society, what you get rewarded and acknowledged for, but also some of it is just core personality, how you see the world, right? Then there's another personality that's the rebel. And the rebel is that individual that which was me, right? Don't tell me what to eat. I am not measuring my food. I will not do 3 reps. I choose to do 2. It's like I have to do it my way. And so I never can take advice. I couldn't take advice, even though it was the best possible advice for me. Couldn't take it because my little rebel had to feel like I was making the choice and I was deciding. Well, it's fascinating. There's 4 different types, and we have a whole quiz that you could take. And it will tell you your type. It'll tell you your superpowers. It'll tell you that when you show up positive in your superpowers, here's what you have. And when you show up in the negative, right, here's the pressure and the impact it puts on you and your personality. But here's the big thing about all of that, right? The bottom line goal is this. I don't believe that we have to live in force. I believe that we are designed to align with energy. The whole time I was losing weight, I stayed off the scale because that was one of the big things that used to trigger me all the time. I'd get on the scale, and no matter whether it was good news or bad news, I used it to beat myself up, or I'd be afraid or something, And so I stayed off the scale. But I would stand once a week, I'd stand in front of the mirror and take my jeans and kind of tug on them. In the early days, I was like pudging out over the top. And then there was a point in time where I could move them a little bit with a tug. And then there was a day when I could just pull them right off, And what I kind of got to watch in that process was the fact that I was changing. I didn't have to validate it with a number, but I could then watch my emotions. And I could look in the mirror and see a difference, right? See that things were changing. But what I recognized is that my identity and my strategy changed along with it. That makes sense, right? And so these personality types kind of reveal the best of us and the worst of us, and how to manage that as you are finding your way to ease. People used to say to me all the time, wow, Deb, you're losing weight. And you know what my natural response back was? Yeah, I am working so hard at it. And one day I thought, that is such BS. I'm not working. This is the easiest thing I've ever done. Why do I feel compelled to say I'm working hard? And it was like, oh, because I need kudos. I need them to go, oh, wow, well, it's really showing. I needed somebody to pat me on the back, and I'm earning it by working hard. And I thought, wow, that's a mindset I got to get past, because the truth is, this is the easiest thing I've ever done. This is effortless. It's effortless. I stopped eating white stuff and I drank more water. That was the plan. And then I started feeling better. So then I started walking. And so that was the big plan. It was the easiest thing I'd ever done in my whole life. But I used neuro tools. Cravings that had driven my life, my entire life, they were gone in a heartbeat. Lauren, what I figured out was that it's all happening in the mindset. People say mindset is everything. And I say, no, it isn't everything, because there are other aspects, but everything does begin with mindset. And that's kind of become my new philosophy and my new marching orders is no matter what I'm doing, I got to first deal with the mindset. Then I can come up with my plan. Mindset first and then action second. So that's kind of how we took it to the next level.
Let's just say that again for the people in the back. Everything begins with mindset. I'm just like, yes, write it down, make it your screensaver, because there is just so much power and self-awareness and accountability in understanding that what we think is going to interact with what we feel and what we do throughout our entire day. And I just loved how you started talking about how once somebody can better understand their wellness personality, and everyone I'm sure listening is like, okay, I need to go take this quiz. I already feel like I'm a little bit of a rebel or a warrior. I want to know what the other ones are. And it's like, after they take this quiz, and it's information, right? Like coming from the mindset of knowledge is power, gather more knowledge about yourself. What, you are your greatest investment. So if we're learning more about what we're investing in and how to better that investment, that can only lead to positive things. And as you were speaking and you're talking about how we're in this force versus flow alignment with our desires, our wants, our goals, our values, different things like that, I immediately went back to what we were talking about before we started recording, which was this idea that like hustle culture has really been championed in terms of a way to externally validate success. It's almost like there's this expectation around, well, if you're not burnout or sleeping less than 3 hours a day and doing everything all the time, working out, in a relationship, balance, meditating, chasing the career, creating, innovating, then you're a complete failure. And it's like, talk about force, right? Like I'm exhausted just like trying to list things. And it's like, this flow state is something that we can all access within ourselves. And I feel like it goes back to that being self-aware piece where it's like, where are you in flow? What does that feel like? And I'm just so grateful that you shared a little bit more about your own health and wellness story throughout this explanation, where it's like, yes, you could have very easily gone to these external validators that most people look at with weight loss, where, okay, what does the scale say? What does my body measurement say? But you are more on, no, how do I feel? How do my pants feel on my body? How much energy do I have? What am I actually feeling within the body that I'm cultivating and creating? And how is this supporting the flow state as opposed to force? And I know that so many health coaches that I've worked alongside of and had the pleasure of talking to, they're like, oh my gosh, like everybody wants to see a number change, whether it's I want to be a size whatever, or I want to see this number on the scale. And it's like, okay, but we're still getting to that force hustle culture, and we're looking for external validators. And again, it goes back to what you shared earlier, where it's like, that's a temporary goal. What happens once you see that number or you meet that size and you've trained your brain that it sucked to get there? So I just absolutely am so curious to hear more about neuro tools. You said that one of the keys to the success that you had, not only with your businesses, but obviously with your own wealth, was you utilize these neuro tools every day, multiple times a day. So for our listeners, can you explain what a neuro tool is and maybe an example or two of one?
Yeah. So there are neuro tools that you use in a conscious, it's a conscious mind neuro tool. So that means you're aware, you're awake, you're headed down a path. And right here, right now, you got to stop, right? You got to stop right now. So what we're doing is we're pattern interrupting. It's just simple. It's a little stop sign. Put it up in front of your face. What you're doing is saying to the brain, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there. Stop. Don't go there. Now, it's a simple pattern interrupt, but it takes conscious awareness to do it, right? So if you're going to use a pattern interrupt, a great neuro tool, that's fantastic. Stop yourself when you're getting ready to reach for one of the foods that you decided you weren't going to eat, right? When cravings are taking over, when procrastination is getting you and you're like, I don't work out or whatever it is. In the moment that you become conscious and aware, you can use a tool to help you shift. So I always say you got to interrupt the pattern. Then what we want to do is pivot. There's my basketball stuff, right? We're going to pivot away and move in a brand new direction. So there's the conscious mind tools, and that's fabulous. Then there are conscious mind tools that just elevate energy. So fast music, powerful language, I'm the boss. I got this. I'm amazing. So it's positive affirmations, positive energy, where you listen to something and just the listening to it elevates your mood. Then on top of it, you're going to anchor it. So every single anchors are something really simple, right? It's a way you touch your body. You snap your finger. You can use tapping as an anchor. But what you're doing is you're saying to the body, remember this. Remember this. We know we have muscle memory. You have system memory. Everything in the body is one big set of memories. And so we can anchor good feelings and memories. But I would take it a step further and let's talk about the subconscious mind, right? Because the only way to reprogram the subconscious mind, a couple things have to happen. Number one, you have to be in a relaxed state. So the interesting thing about your subconscious programming is you were really programmed from the ages of 0 to 7, right? One of the reasons that happens is you're fresh, you're new, you're a sponge. Your brain wave frequencies are at their lowest and slowest. You have no defensive posturing. You have no analytics. You have none of that going on. So when someone says something to you, it's as if you download it and now you own it. So someone says, what a loser. You'll never amount to anything. You're ugly. You're fat. You're a girl. You can't do math. I mean, who do you think you are? You're going to have to work hard for the money. And all the things we get told or we observe, all of that becomes a part of our programming. How people treat us, whether we have unconditional love that is given to us or whether we have to earn it, all of that stuff becomes part of the way we see the world and how we engage. And so to reprogram that original programming, we have to first, get ourselves into that relaxed state because it opens up the subconscious mind. So we use music, we use meditation bells, we use deep breathing, we use visualization, we use anchor tapping. All of these things bring that energy down into that open space so that you can overwrite. You're writing over the old stuff with something new that is actually going to take you where you want to go. So one of my favorite neuro tools that I've created lots of nice nighttime tools. One of the newest ones is based on some new research, and it's a binaural recording. So we use binaural beats. The first thing is a binaural beat music. There's a beat or a rhythm of the music, right, that you are listening to, and your brain does a thing called brain wave entrainment. It trains, it aligns, it copies it. So if you put on this music, it's kind of like, boom, you're down in theta in a heartbeat instead of having to meditate for hours, your brain is there, right? You're in that open state. And so that's number one. There's music on that. And then the second thing is that we do a recording. So what you're going to do is you're going to use your stereo pods, right? Or headset. And you will hear one message coming in the right side, the right channel, and a different one coming in the left, and they compete. Most people call me the minute they start listening, they said, "Oh, something's wrong with the recording, Deb." I'm like, no, it's designed that way because it's bombarding. What we're doing is we're bombarding the conscious mind as well as the subconscious. And so your defense mechanisms are like shot. Because if you repeat an affirmation you don't really believe, like I'm beautiful, I'm beautiful, I'm beautiful, but you don't feel beautiful, you have this kind of BS meter that says, no, you're not, no, you're not, no, you're not. It's a little critical, voice in your ear. But when we do this Neuro tool, what happens is you got these messages going. And one of the facts we know about your conscious mind is it can only focus on one thing at a time. So if you're focusing on the I am messages, I'm amazing, I'm unstoppable, I'm incredible, I'm beautiful, right? Then if you're focused there, and let's just say that your mind is reacting to that message, guess what's seeping into your subconscious? The messages that are coming in on the other channel. So the other messages are coming in are taped, you're incredible, you're unstoppable. They are the messages from a loving other you should have gotten as a child. There's so many people didn't. So I am, you are, bombardment, music, all of that's happening at once. And so what happens is your brain does something fascinating is at first it's kind of overwhelming. It's like, wow. And then all of a sudden your brain picks a side to listen to. And as that occurs, the other side is just almost playing in the background. You almost don't even know it. And so you can listen to these during the day. You can listen as you fall asleep. But what people always tell me is that the freakiest thing is you put it on for 30 minutes. You can do anything else while you're using your neuro tools. When you're done, you just feel different. You just feel better, right? There's just something. And then I've had people come back to me and say, you know what the weirdest thing, Deb, is I've been listening to the neuro tools every night, all day long. And all of a sudden the other day, I looked somebody square in the eyes and I said, well, I'm pretty unstoppable. And it was like, I have no idea where that came from, except it was kind of like Deb in the head, right? It was like this voice that just kind of came out. And that's what neuro tools are. Conscious, subconscious, awareness, tools that can shift in the now and can reprogram for the long haul to really change the internal dialogue that is happening in your own head.
Oh, I just love this. And I just feel like it's so empowering for our listeners to hear, because I feel like as time progresses, there tend to be two different dialogues that are very common in Western culture, which is, well, I'll get to it when my kids are out of the house, or I retire, or I move, or whatever it is. Or we hear this mindset of like, well, that's just not who I am. I'm not that person. It's like the you can't teach an old dog new tricks type of excuse, where it's like, well, that's just the way I was raised. And my family is that way. My siblings are that way. My friends are that way. I'm that way. And what is so empowering about these neuro tools that you're not only gifting the world with, but helping us realize is these are things that we see all the time, where it's like, no, like we do have the ability to literally rewire our brains for whatever we are trying to achieve, trying to cultivate, trying to create and innovate within our own selves. And I just loved how you gave a few examples. And I thought that the first one that you talked about, where it's like, okay, like stop sign, like straight up stop, we're breaking the pattern. People have seen this all over social media. Like immediately the first example that came to mind was Mel Robbins' 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Like just do it. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what Deb is talking about. Mel's just using neuro tools to, help people redirect things. And I'm like, okay, like I love this. Then it's like, no, now we're going to pivot. So you have stopped whatever it is, and we're going to pivot. And we're elevating our energy. I loved how you were like, put on a, kick-ass playlist, like really move and like get around, like, help yourself up. And I feel like this is something we see all the time, especially it's football season right now as we're recording. And it's like, there's a reason why there's music that plays all throughout the game. And when the teams come out and after halftime and they're elevating their energy, right? And then it's like, then anchor it to yourself, ground yourself in the present moment, like physically feel, whether it's tapping, your cleats on the field, your hands on the ball, or, just all of these different things. If I'm just alone in my office, right? Like, cool, I can ground myself by like touching the fabric of my blouse or, petting my dog or whatever it is, ground myself in the present moment for that conscious rewiring. And then I feel like so much of the subconscious work that you were talking about with utilizing these different neuro tools, it's just brilliant. And I just feel like it's obtainable. I feel like so many people want change in their life, especially with their habits. Yet they're reserved or afraid because it's unknown. And what you're simply sharing with the world today and for our listeners is like, this is stuff that is really obtainable. Like, you just put in some earphones and your brain is going to be forced to choose something. And it might not feel like a ton of work in the moment, but you never know. One of those affirmations or one of those new rewirings is going to show up in a conversation and you're gonna be like, oh, I am unstoppable. Yes, that is very true. So I just absolutely love just not only how empowering your work is that you're sharing with people, but also how accessible it is. Like, it really is one of those things where it's like, you don't have to have this infinite amount of wealth or this fantastical, mystical place to be transported to in order to make these pivotal changes in your life. It's like, these are literal tools that you can do on the fly anywhere. So that's absolutely incredible.
Those mystical moments are wonderful. They're healing. They are everything about them. They're a wonderful thing. But the truth is, true transformation is repetition over time with emotion. So the little things you do, I was going back to the softball story, I kept thinking throughout the whole time, the 3 years, I kept thinking, this is so silly. What the heck are we wasting all this time? We're all laying down on the grass, right? Imagining, letting our bodies move through this, and I kept thinking, what is this doing? And I have seen so many people in the programs that I'm working with, where they'll get real impatient. They're like, nothing's happening, Deb, nothing's happening. I'm like, something is happening. You just can't see it yet. Right? Something's happening, but only the people who are true to put in the repetition over time with emotion, that's the only one that gets to experience it. Just think about this. How old are you? 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 plus years old? Your life did not get into this situation in 2 weeks. You're not going to get out of it in 2 weeks. It will take some time. But the good news is, you'll feel better almost immediately. You said before, we're so invested in seeing like a number on a scale or a size of clothing. And part of that is society. Society says, you need to be a this, you need to be a size 2. And then what happens for us is that we decide, when I'm a 2 or whatever the number is, right? When I'm a this, then I'll be happy. Then I'll be in love with myself. Then I'll feel good about it. Then I'll be proud. Then. So what we're saying is that it's qualified, right? It's a very qualified experience. Like, I can't feel good about myself until I can fit into this number. And so I'm chasing an outcome that appears to be a number in order to feel something. But the truth is, when you learn that you can feel that now, this is the big thing, feel that energy now and do the little things along the way, then it's only a matter of time that you achieve that goal with ease and flow. I told you I didn't get on the scale. I had a number in my mind. It was like, I'd really like to get that, but I wouldn't get on the scale. I was like, I was not going to do it. And then one day I'm at the doctor's office and he's like, jump on the scale. And I said, okay, but don't say anything. Don't tell me. I don't want to know what the number is. I had to make a big deal about it. So I got on the scale and he went, wow. And then I could not help myself. I hadn't looked because he said, wow. I was like, 50 plus pounds. I was pretty good. And then I had to explain everything. What I noticed was I didn't like how it felt to see the number, because then my mind went crazy. Like, are you safe at this weight? And can you keep it off? And, what's going to change now? And what does it mean? What does it mean? And I thought, oh my goodness, here's the truth. I've been feeling great about myself. I've been feeling good in my body. I've been feeling great about the way I look in the mirror. I've been loving more and more and feeling the peace and the joy and the happiness. I decided that when I got to my ideal weight, right, I would feel a certain way. And then I just got committed to feel that way every single day. And then one day the number showed up. Isn't that amazing? Right? So the number can show up through stress and struggle and heartache and pushing and dragging and pulling and effort, right? Or the number can show up with ease. I'm not saying you're not doing the things you need to do, but the judgment is gone, and the self-judgment and all of that has just dissipated when you are working in flow.
There's so much truth behind the knowledge of consistency compounds. Like, we have to do things over and over and over again in order to become an expert or in order to do something with ease. And there's just so much profound knowledge in the quick part that you shared around when you reflect on whatever stage or season of life that you're in, how much time has elapsed for you to reach that state. It's not a 7-day, 10-day, 21-day, 2-week quick fix. Like, it's not just something that magically happened where it's like, okay, I am in this state that I find undesirable, whether that's in your career, your relationships, your health, whatever it might be. Time has elapsed. And what has happened during that time is you've repeated habits that have led you into that state, consciously or subconsciously. But the empowerment comes behind knowing that repetition over time, choosing to rewire your brain, utilizing these neuro tools, accessing knowledge around your wellness personality, knowing yourself, it gives you the freedom to upgrade your life at any stage where it's like, I'm going to be this version 2.0, 3.0, whatever it is. And the more success you have with continuing to be repetitive with the things that you value or prioritize in your life, it's like this beautiful avalanche snowball, but of nothing but abundance and good things. And I feel like numbers change, sizes change, right? We are ever-changing beings. And it's like, when you are chasing a feeling of like, okay, I know that I want to feel this way, or I want to feel X way, that is something that you can check in internally with every single day and utilize that insight through self-awareness to continue to build better habits.
There was all this research done with lottery winners. I'm sure you've heard this story before, but people who started out broke, stone broke, and then won mega millions in a lottery, 80% of them went back to broke within 2 years. And when they interviewed those people, they said, I wanted to win the lottery. I was, just thought that being rich would solve everything. And then it hit and I realized I hate it. I was uncomfortable. I didn't know how to deal with the money. Everybody in the world wanted it. I didn't have any boundaries. I made bad decisions. I didn't like my life in the middle of that. So, they were able to get rid of it in one fashion or another, because it pushed them out of their set point or comfort zone. Well, the same thing happens with body. People are chasing a number, not because that number is important to you. It's because you've gotten it from somewhere else. And so it's like, I need to be that size or that weight. So if you force your body to that weight, many times what happens is, I don't feel good at this weight. I feel weak. I feel vulnerable. I'm tired. I don't have muscles. And so what you don't really know is, what will that mean, right? What will it mean to have achieved that goal? And I can tell you, if people don't maintain it, there's a really good chance that It was not in alignment to begin with. You picked an arbitrary number, then you tried to contort your body to that number and discovered it really isn't you. It really isn't your natural way of being in the world.
Absolutely. And I feel like too, it's one of those things where it just comes down to reassessing and looking at your value system pretty regularly. I mean, because I know that you know this, but like for our listeners, it's like, depending on what season or what age of life you're in, you are not the same person with the same set of values down to the T that you were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. You know, it's like, it's always so funny. People always say like some people peak in high school, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, look at what their values were at the time. They were living those values. So, you know, it's this core memory in their brain around like, wow, like I had all of these things, and because they were truly happy because they were in alignment with their values and that flow state that you're talking about. And it's like, okay, well, what do you value today? And giving yourself the compassion to be like, have my values changed? Yes. Awesome. So how do I create sustainability with the adjustments or the upgrades that I need to usher in that are in alignment with this new set of values or that complement the values that have been there the whole time? So that's absolutely incredible. Deb, I know our time is winding down, and I just feel like you've already answered this question like with 20 different little tidbits that our listeners can take. But we always like to end an episode with asking our guests, what is one misconception about living well that you wish you would have learned sooner? And I know that you already gave us like 20 amazing new things that people are like going to figure out and utilize and take the quiz and do all these things and be like, I wish I knew this sooner. But what about for you personally?
I think the key for me is I wish I had known it didn't have to be so hard. I wish I had known that there was a different option other than dragging, pushing, pulling, you know, that kind of that warrior energy. I'm probably some warrior and some rebel in my personality trait. And I wish I had known that there were options, and that simple awareness can leave us with a choice. And so like now, when I show up some way in my life and I can easily say, oh, there's the little warrior in me. Oh, that's such a little rebel. And it's a light way to be able to say, yeah, I don't think that it's helping me to engage in that right now. Here's a power question for your people. When you show up in your now and you don't like the result, ask yourself, what is the core that brought me here? What's the cause, right? What is it that I was thinking, I was doing, I was picturing? Because the truth is this, that our current reality is a match. It is a match to the thoughts we had, the beliefs we were holding, all of that. And when you can look at this and depersonalize it, I don't even know if that's a word, but it's kind of like, don't take it personal and go, I'm a loser. Instead, if you go, it's a match. I was showing up in my rebel and this is what I created. Isn't that interesting? Like you said, be curious, non-judgmental, but curious. Go, So if I want to create something different, it's time to have a new thought.
I just love that so much because it ushers in this liberation from expectations, or it brings you this sense of, I'm almost feeling like this exhale, right? Where it's like you can breathe out something that doesn't align anymore, and you cannot take it personally and just be like, okay, cool. Like I have an answer to this equation, right? Like this is a really tough one to solve on paper. And yet I can figure out how to do this differently. So I just feel like that's absolutely just so beautifully said. Now, Deb, I already know that our listeners are going to want to connect with you and get more wisdom and all of these beautiful things. But for our listeners that want to connect with you, what social channels would you like people to use, and how would you like them to get more Deb?
Got a Facebook channel, Instagram channel, all of those are there. What I want you to know is not more of me. I want you to know more of you. And that quiz is going to give you such incredible insight. And then guess what? If you say, Deb, I love the quiz, I see it, I want more, great. Come and join us, be a part of our community, download the app, try it free. I mean, there's so many resources. The bottom line is the more you know you, the faster you can get where you want to go. So we want to help people in that journey.
I love that. Listeners, the more you know you, that is the gift that Deb is sharing with us today. Thank you so much, Deb, for being here with us, sharing your wisdom and just imparting such a gift of knowledge to not only just me, but with our listeners. Thank you so much for listening. This has been Sophia Unfiltered, a podcast by Sophia Health. I'm your host, Lauren Deitch. If you're interested in connecting to wellness professionals that can offer one-on-one support, visit sophiahealth.com or connect with us, our community, and providers anytime on social. If this episode resonated with you at all, we'd love to hear about it in the comments section of your favorite podcast provider or with a 5-star rating. Let us know what your biggest takeaway was from the episode or share it with someone you hope to inspire. Join us again next time for more real conversations, stories, and insights that help empower you with the knowledge and inspiration needed to transform the way we take care of ourselves.